My guest today is Lawrence Reed. He became the president of the Foundation for Economic Education, FEE, in 2008. He served as president of FEE for almost 11 years when he retired to the role of president emeritus in 2019. He has taught economics full-time from 1997 to 1984 at Northwood University in Michigan and chaired the Department of Economics in 1982 to 1984. His interests in political and economic affairs have taken him as a freelance journalist to 92 countries. That's crazy, 92 countries on 6 continents. He is an advisor to numerous organizations around the world, and he's authored nearly 2,000 columns and articles in newspapers, magazines, and journals all over the United States and abroad. His writings have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Examiner, Christian Science Monitor, the Intellectual Takeout, USA Today, the American Spectator, the Epoch Times, the Detroit Free Press, and so on. He has authored or co-authored 8 books, and in 2022, something special happened. He was named by the president of Poland as the recipient of the highest honor that Poland bestows upon a foreigner, the Grand Cross of the Order of Merit of the Republic of Poland. Absolutely incredible. I'm so excited to have Mr. Larry Reed with us today. Larry, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Richard. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Larry, I had the pleasure to first be introduced to you. You did a speaking engagement at an organization I'm a member of, the Nelson Nash Institute. You were asked to participate by my mentor, the late R. Nelson Nash. And I thoroughly enjoyed the presentation that you gave. And you were the guest speaker for our evening dinner. And you really spoke about the power of character and the need of people of tremendous character in the world, and how the world to some degree is really shaped around those that step forward and demonstrate impeccable character. And you've spoken on that topic numerous times. We may delve into little bits of that as we go through today. What really connected with me is that was one of my early exposures to FEE as an organization. That's fee.org, the Foundation for Economic Education. And Nelson Nash, my mentor, he was an advocate, a supporter of that organization since the mid 50s, as I recall. And I started to really understand that there was this machine in the background promoting the ideas of free enterprise and liberty and personal autonomy and maybe minimizing a little bit of government overreach and regulation so that the economic machine can move and churn. Now, something was happening around 2008 when you were asked to become the president of that organization. The organization, I think, was somewhat, for lack of a better term, maybe it was dwindling to some degree, and it wasn't reaching a level of prominence as it's known today. What transpired? What were some of the challenges that you needed to take on when you stepped into the role of president?
Well, great question. Thank you, Richard. 2008 was a very eventful year, not only for FEE, but for much of the world, because as people will remember, that was the year that the bottom fell out of the various markets, stock market, commodity markets, and what have you, and the economy plunged into a very deep recession. That started right at the time I took over as president of FEE in September of 2008. FEE had already faced some challenging issues. Frequently organizations that have been around a long time, and at that point, FEE had been around since 1946, and their founder has since passed away. Frequently, organizations undergo a period of drift or uncertainty, or a need for a rethinking of their strategic plan. And we certainly were in need of that in 2008. FEE had a rough patch. And there were those who thought, wow, for this guy Reed to come in and take FEE over at the start of this massive economic uncertainty is going to be a real challenge. And it was, but I never thought that we were going to fail, because I think success depends upon choosing the right team, finding the right people, empowering them, not second guessing them, and forging ahead with a coherent, well thought out strategic plan. So one of the very first things we had to do at FEE in 2008 was to shore up our existing support base. So I had to get to know the donors to fee that I didn't already know and find some new ones. As a private charitable nonprofit, we depend entirely upon contributions. So I had to rustle the bushes at the start of a Great Recession to encourage existing donors to stay with us and find some new ones. And also internally, I had to make some very tough decisions regarding spending reductions. We were looking at a deficit of more than $1 million. Fortunately, we had some reserves we could draw upon. But before that first 6 months of my tenure was out, we reduced the deficit to about 900,000. The following year, I cut it further to about 300,000. And then the next year, we were in the black and have been ever since. And so rebuilding an organization with new blood, new staff, a well thought out strategic plan, giving people the confidence they needed to support us. Those were the challenges that I had to deal with, and we dealt with them successfully. So, but I don't want to take full credit because we had a great board of trustees and increasingly a phenomenal staff. And I worked with a lot of good people to turn fee around and put it on a path of success.
Well, no one wins the game alone. We all operate on some kind of team to some degree, and assembling a good team, I think, is a key component of that. So I'm glad you identified that. What I think is interesting when you talk about stepping into a role, and I surmise you probably had some understanding walking into the situation that there was a deficit situation, deficit scenario.
Yes.
And for many people, they might look at that and say, "Wow, I'm stepping into a situation that's somewhat maybe, doomed to fail. I'm volunteering and choosing to go down maybe with the ship as the moment I get in there." And yet knowing that in advance, there's people who walk into that scenario and don't know, and they're faced with the challenge that they have to overcome. And then there's taking the path of, this has to be done. We believe in what needs to be done. I'm going to put my hand up and agree to step forward into the light, to be that guiding force, to build that strategic plan. There's a lot that goes into that thinking process. So what was
Yes.
going on for you at that time when the decision was made that you would accept the role?
Well, a few years before, less than a decade, I had been on the board at FEE. I love the organization and its mission. I did not want to see it fail. So I was partly motivated by the desire to come in and help an organization that I dearly loved. But I've never been the type to run from a challenge. I think that's what animates and motivates most people. And certainly I've never looked for some bureaucratic job where I could just punch in at 9, punch out at 5. I'm happy to say that within 5 years of becoming president in 2008, FEE was reaching a larger audience than ever before in its history. And our good mutual friend Nelson Nash knew that and supported us. And don't we miss him? But he was like me, a longtime supporter and believer in FEE and its message. So all of those things and more motivated me. And I like fixing problems, I should point out too. I'd like to take on a problem and make it history.
Amazing. And so for our viewers who maybe aren't familiar with FEE as an organization, again, that's fee.org. Maybe just explain, what is the mission of FEE and how does it support the ideas of liberty?
FEE was founded in 1946 by the late Leonard Read, no relation. He spelled his name R-E-A-D. I didn't know him in the last 7 years of his life. But after World War II, Leonard looked around and thought, golly, for a country founded on ideas of liberty and free enterprise, private property, and limited government, there sure is a shortage of anybody who's full-time out there defending those institutions and supporting their restoration in the face of the massive growth of government. You think back to the late 40s, World War II had just ended, and a lot of people in the world thought, wow, well, big government saved us. It won the war. But of course, there were people like Leonard who were saying, don't forget, big government was a big reason why the war was fought in the first place. There are lessons to be learned in that. So Leonard saw a need. And over the years, we have refined FEE's message as well as the demographic we are targeting. At first, when FEE was virtually alone, Leonard and the staff were eager to speak to anybody who would listen. By the time I became president, it was apparent that we were, in some ways, a victim of our own success. So many other organizations had formed, inspired in part by FEE, that we had to decide what is our niche. We're no longer by ourselves. And it's not the same when you try to speak to a 60-year-old as it is when you are trying to speak to a 16-year-old. So under my leadership and our board of trustees after 2008, we determined that we would focus on a more narrowed demographic. And that is not just everybody of any age, but rather newcomers to ideas of liberty in high school and college. Let me clarify that because, we first thought, well, high school and college, that's our niche. But we didn't want to focus on everybody within that age demographic, roughly 14 to 24. We wanted to focus on the newcomers to liberty. Students in that age group who hadn't heard these ideas before, or maybe had heard them in the context of one particular issue, but not the broad range of issues or the foundational philosophical base of liberty. So that's our focus now, and our mission. Our mission is to educate and inspire newcomers to ideas of liberty within the demographic of high school and college age students.
Amazing. And with that in mind, we're going to hear more about the powerful ideas of liberty when we come back after these messages.